Well, that didn't take very long, did it? The Toronto Maple Leafs have fired head coach Mike Babcock, and being promoted into his place is Sheldon Keefe. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe. Let's take a look at what the Leafs did under Mike Babcock and what they hope to do under Sheldon Keefe moving forward. So last night was definitely a night some fans in Toronto were clamoring for and have been waiting for a week or two, and others are a little bit more on the fence. Now, taking a look at the Leafs, last night they got rid of their, coming into his 5th season with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mike Babcock. He won a Stanley Cup with the Detroit Red Wings, was part of that dynasty that the Red Wings had in the 90s into the early 2000s. Came up to Toronto as a rebuilding organization, and now, as of last night, was officially removed as the head coach of the Leafs. So taking a look at his tenure in Toronto, starting in 2015-2016, that was his first season with the Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs had a 29-42-11 record. That's 69 points on the season for the Leafs, and they missed the playoffs. The next season, 2016-2017, things turned around a pretty drastic amount, getting 40 wins on the season, 27 losses, and 15 overtime/shootout loss points. That adds up to 95 points for the Leafs that season. They would make the playoffs that year. They played the Washington Capitals in the first round and lost in 6 games to the Capitals in that one. So now the feeling, the Leafs are playing pretty well. Coming into the 2017-2018 season, expectations were high for the Leafs that year. They would take on a 49-26-7 record going into the playoffs that year, so they almost had a 50-win season that year, picking up 105 points that season. They lost in the first round yet again in 7 games to the Boston Bruins. Now they go into 2018-2019, and that was last season. 46 wins last season, 28 losses, and 8 overtime, past regulation loss points for the Maple Leafs. That was good enough for a 100-point season last year for the Leafs, where once again they made the playoffs and lost in the first round to their rival, the Boston Bruins, in 7 games. And then coming into this season, which obviously isn't the full season, but for the 2019-2020 season, the Leafs are firing Mike Babcock with a record of 9 wins, 10 losses, and 4 additional points from overtime or shootout. That's 22 points on the season. Not good enough for the Toronto Maple Leafs and warranting a removal of Mike Babcock. So, we just made a video the other day talking about this whole situation with Toronto, and things have really escalated over the past week with Toronto, and it reaches breaking point. The camel's back was snapped last night around 4 or 5 o'clock. We saw the news come out that Mike Babcock was being fired by the Maple Leafs. Now, it was pretty much a given who we knew would likely take his spot moving forward, and that was Sheldon Keefe. Sheldon Keefe has been with Kyle Dubas, who was with the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds in the OHL, in the Ontario Hockey League. They both kind of developed together, Dubas being a manager, developing, as well as Keefe becoming a better head coach. They've obviously continued that relationship. Sheldon Keefe has been with the Toronto Marlies, continuing to work his craft, while Dubas has been in the NHL, pretty much grooming Sheldon Keefe for this position. It's going to be an interesting turnover for the Leafs. A little fun fact you may not know, last season, November 19th, so the day before yesterday, I know it makes it a little more confusing, but basically the day before, so obviously yesterday was November 20th, the Leafs let go of their head coach. November 19th, this time last year, Mike Yeo, who you may not remember his name, but he was the head coach of the St. Louis Blues at this time last year. What happened with the St. Louis Blues this spring? They went on a magical run, and since they fired their head coach, they brought in their new head coach, and things completely turned around for the St. Louis Blues. Craig Berube came in and completely turned things around for the St. Louis Blues, and they ended up winning a Stanley Cup. So there's definitely something to keep an eye on there. Are we seeing history repeat itself? The likelihood of that happening is it's really not likely, but there's still a chance. There's always a chance. The Leafs are definitely on the wrong side of the 8 ball here, coming into the Thanksgiving holidays and things like that. They got to find a way to turn this around. Sheldon Keefe does not have an easy job ahead of him. He's going to be in a pressure cooker of an environment in Toronto. His first NHL job will not be an easy one, but we'll see how he handles it. There seems to be a lot better of a connection between Sheldon Keefe and Kyle Dubas and their philosophies and things like that. So we may see that start to take form, and we'll see if it's for the better or for the worse for the Leafs. It's just crazy. Mike Babcock was so highly thought of. When Toronto swooped in and took him from Buffalo 5 years ago to acquire him and bring him in as a head coach, he was a great bridge gap, it seems like now, looking back, for the Leafs. Obviously wasn't able to get them to the promised land, but definitely helped move the team in the right direction. And he said that in his press conference yesterday. He really turned the team around. I mean, you look at the first season, how really, 69 points that first year, and then turning around to 95 points, 105 points, 100 points. The Leafs have been pretty successful over the last 3 seasons, minus the first season, which was still a rebuilding Leafs. Since then, the Leafs have been really solid, and they seem to be finding success. They are under 500 in the past calendar year, so we'll see if they can turn that around moving forward. So let me know, what do you guys think of the Toronto Maple Leafs hiring Sheldon Keefe as the new head coach? What do you think is going to happen with Mike Babcock? It seems like the easy option right now would be really the only team that has another head coach on the hot seat, and that's the New Jersey Devils. Would the Devils be willing to try and take an interest in Mike Babcock? That's something that would have to be figured out. Maybe if they, are they going to sell on Taylor Hall? Try and give him one last selling point. Hey, Mike Babcock, an historic head coach, or is it not going to work out? So let me know what you think. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.